Well, we've spoken about the people in front of the mic throughout most of this semester and the role of the people in front of the mic. And I thought in this week that we're doing TV production, I'd get a couple of my colleagues and I'll put my hand up and say a couple of my friends on for a call to chat about production and what the role entails. Because I think that for a lot of you guys there, you've grown up wanting to be on air. You're probably not fully across the details of what happens behind the scenes. So I thought it'd be just good to have a bit of a broad conversation between three producers, three colleagues, and three friends about the wonderful world of television production. Starting with Mitch Finlayson. Mitch is an esteemed TV producer, more than a decade of experience, and a graduate of Deacon's Media and Comms degree. Mitch, thanks for jumping on.
Thanks, David. Good to be here.
Luca Urso, he's from the dream team, the La Trobe alumni, and a graduate of the sports journalism degree here at La Trobe. Luca, great to have you on as well.
Great to be here, Dave.
Mitch, just expand on what your background is and tell us a little bit about your current role and where you're working.
Thanks, Dave. Yeah, so currently I'm a TV producer at Jam TV. A little bit about Jam TV. We're a production company specialising in sport and entertainment. Our primary business, I guess, over the past decade has been covering and producing live sport that you see on TV, and plenty of studio shows and panel shows that sort of are linked with sport, but with an entertainment lens, I guess. So some of the current shows we do and we've done over the recent years, the Channel 9 footy shows, we cover a myriad of sports, AFLW, golf, cycling. For Channel 9, we also do Millionaire Hot Seat, so an entertainment product more so than a sporting product. And we've recently just entered into the documentary space as well, primarily sport. So you would have seen last year on your screens potentially Making Their Mark, which covered the 2020 AFL season. And at the moment, we're in post-production for a Disney documentary covering the most recent AFLW season. So as you can see, most of our work is sport and entertainment. For me personally, it's obviously working on a combination of all of the above. I guess I started way back in 2011, not wanting to be on camera, which we'll go into shortly. I guess I've gone through every sort of rung of production over the recent years, from production assistant and now sort of running broadcasts or running the teams that work on the broadcasts and running individual shows, kind of the leader of the various teams that work on a certain show. So that's a little bit about me.
Luca, you're also on the team there at Jam. Tell us a little bit about your role specifically. I think Mitch was reasonably comprehensive about what Jam does, so maybe just a little bit about your role within Jam.
Yep, Mitch covered most of it, but I am also a TV producer currently working on the Sunday Footy Show, so the senior producer on that show, and then also working on the 2 footy classifieds on Monday and Wednesday. And as Mitch said, I've worked on a range of projects across Jam throughout the years. So cycling, AFLW is my main one over summer, which I love, and a heap of other ones as well. And I started in TV in 2017 on those footy shows. So the footy show, footy classified, and the Sunday Footy Show as a production assistant. And throughout the years, just worked my way up, which I guess we'll chat about a bit more in a little bit.
I want to talk about how you guys both got your start, but perhaps, Luca, we'll stick with you. We're in the middle of the footy season. You're working on the footy shows at the moment. What does a week look like for you? Take us, I suppose, behind the scenes of a week, working on the footy shows, and we're talking footy classified and the Sunday Footy Show.
Yep. So on a Monday, footy classifieds on Monday and Wednesday are traditionally sort of one-day production. So we meet early in the morning with the talent on a Zoom meeting like this. Everyone discusses their ideas. We have a chat about what people like, what they're strong on, and then essentially we'll spend the rest of the day going away and putting the show together, sourcing grabs, graphics, getting stats from champion data to back up the on-air talent's arguments. So that's a Monday and a Wednesday typically. On Tuesdays is my day off. Thursday is a pre-production day for the Sunday Footy Show. So preparing everything that we possibly can before the round of footy, quiz, Lloydie's deep dive, and any other little bits and pieces that we can. Friday's my other day off, so Tuesday, Friday, split days off. Saturday, I'm in the office watching the footy, preparing the Sunday footy show, chatting with the talent, seeing what they're strong on. And then Sunday's showtime on the Sunday footy show. So early morning start, and we go to air live at 10 every Sunday morning.
You mentioned the production meeting on Monday mornings and on Wednesday mornings as well. Mitch, you've also worked on Footy Classified, and you worked, with, I suppose, we'll absolutely high profile talent in the room. What's it like in that environment? What to work with high profile talent like that, and how do those conversations sort of generally play out?
Yeah, so broadly, as a producer, I see our main role is facilitating the on-air talent and the experts to go out and, in a sense, they're not playing the sport. Obviously, they probably have done in the past, but now they've moved on from probably playing it to on-air talking about it. So, in essence, this is their game day, or the show is their game day, and our job as producers is to get them ready, get the show ready as best as possible. Figure out what their strengths are, what their strong opinions are, and then help them execute them on air. So whether it's sourcing material for them to talk to, figuring out the best order that their thoughts go in, or the topics we talk about on the show go in. But the main thing, when talking, you mentioned high profile talent. I think some advice that I'd give and what you really need to show is a confidence to be able to talk to them like they're anybody. Although it might be very easy to put them on a pedestal if you're watching the sport, or if you come from a background that you're a fan of the team that they played for growing up, you've got to sort of drop that, and you've got to see them as much on your level, or you as high up on their level as anything, because as soon as you start to put them above yourself, I think that the power dynamic there goes a bit out of whack. Yeah. You are essentially the boss of the show. They're on the show, and your main role is to facilitate them being able to go out and play. But at the end of the day, you're in control, and you're the one who makes the final call on decisions about editorially what goes in the show.
And I think that's an important point that perhaps personally I didn't realize when we went into production, that the producer plays such a pivotal role in that sense that ultimately, as you said, the producer is going to decide, right, we're moving on from this, or we're going on to that topic, we're going to lead with this, we're going to lead with that, blah, blah, blah. Those conversations can get pretty interesting, and you need to be prepared. Luca, you mentioned that you're in there on Saturday and Sunday. What are you looking for on the weekend when you're watching the matches, and how do you prepare, for those conversations with talent?
Yeah, I think for me, I'm blessed to have a really, really good strong on-air talent, and they always come with incredible stuff. And I think it's also about knowing your show really well. So I feel like I know, after 6 years, know the Sunday footy show really well. I know what belongs in a first segment. It's usually a more newsy topics, interesting things from the weekend of footy. And then as the show flows, it's about finding what goes in what gap, and thinking to yourself, what are people going to be interested in? If I'm a fan of Club X, what do I want to hear the guys talk about? So, as I said, I think it's about knowing your show really well, but also balancing that with the talent and what they bring.
We've talked a lot about panel shows, I think, to kick us off. But what about live sport? Both of you guys work on live sport. Luca, you mentioned that AFLW is something that you enjoy working on, and Mitch, you're also working on golf broadcasts. How is that different from panel shows, and what's the approach like when you're producing live sport, Mitch?
There's a lot that crosses over, but obviously there's a lot that's different as well. I think the main difference is that for a panel show, for example, the rundown or the plan that you're taking for a show shouldn't really divert off its course. The main topics of conversation aren't going to change from when you start your show and come on air for the first time through until the very end. You might have to lose things if you're running out of time, or you might have to shuffle things around from segment 1 into segment 2, for example. Whereas live sport, there's a lot of planning that goes into it, clearly, but you're planning a lot of contingencies for what if something happens, or what happens, what are we going to do at halftime, for example, of an AFL game, if one team is leading, what are we going to do if the other team is leading, or following storylines that arise sort of throughout the game and stuff that you really can't plan for. So a lot of the editorial stuff you might see during the breaks at quarter times and halftime, they're not planned during the week. They're planned on the run. So I think the producer's primary role when the game is on to make sure you follow storylines and keep across of anything that's happening on the field. But there'll be often times, and Luca can probably echo my thoughts here, where you actually, there might be a stretch of 3 or 4 minutes where you have to take your eye off the game itself and you're not following the ball in play because you are thinking about planning for those breaks. And you just got to have trust in the rest of the production team that they're going to cover the sport adequately while your attention's diverted elsewhere. So I think, in summary, the main difference between the two is a lot more can change in live sport on the run, and you've got to be a lot more flexible per se than when you head into a studio environment when I guess the controllables are all there for you to control.
You mentioned the storylines, Mitch. And look, perhaps you can go into this. What are some of the common sort of storylines that you're looking for as a producer? And I suppose that's across panel shows and live sport. We talked about in the degree, if it bleeds, it leads from a news sense, but sometimes actually understanding that news, like what is newsy and what's not newsy, is more difficult than we remember it to be. What are some of the things that make a good story? What are some of the key angles that you're looking for in storylines?
I think with live sport, it is your obvious stuff. Obviously injuries, how a team's playing, if a certain player's having a great game. I think with live sport is a fair bit more obvious, which is nice, especially in those moments when you have to take your eye off the ball, as Mitch said, during play to think about, hey, what content do I want to have in at halftime? Who do I want to talk about? And it does help that, it is often injuries or, who's the best player on the ground. In terms of a panel show, for example, the Sunday Footy Show, it's your big names and it's your big moments, I feel, especially in games of football. Look at the weekend past, Dusty's return, had it straight at the top of the rundown just because it's Dustin Martin. And, that's going to be newsy. People love him. People talk about him. He's been away. He's come back. He's had a big game. So looking for big names, big moments. And just I feel like I lean a lot on what would I want to see as a fan. If I'm a fan of X club or football in general, what do I want to see the guys talking about and what is the most interesting topic?
Not to get into the weeds of this, but perhaps if we can just indulge a little bit. Like I think one thing that was interesting this year on Footy Classified was after the Luke Beveridge Tom Morris week, that Footy Classified the following week on the Monday still led with the Beveridge thing, even though it's a Thursday night game and it's 4 or 5 days prior. You mentioned, Luca, knowing your show and knowing your place within the ecosystem of shows. Take us through that editorial decision, because something like that was, out of the papers by the time, Footy Classified rolled around on Monday, being 4 or 5 days old by that point.
Yeah, a lot of that is talent driven. So a lot of our talent wouldn't have spoken before that Monday show, especially Caro and Hutchie. So again, it's that balance that Mitch mentioned about what are your talent strong on and what do they lead with. And the talent were strong on that as a lead. But I think the decision was fairly obvious to us. It was by far and away the biggest story of round one. And I think Footy Classified as a show has traditionally looked internally at the media and how the media operates. And I think that story fell right into that Footy Classified slot. As you said, knowing your show is super important. And that Tom Morris and Beveridge story just fell right into that classified slot. So I think we found it a pretty easy decision to push that there, even though it was 5 days old and a million people had a take on it already. As I said, we know our show and we thought that slotted right in perfectly.
Mitch, tell us a little bit about how you first got into it. How did you first get your start? What did you have to do? Do you have to work for free, or internships? What was the way that you muscled your way in the doors?
I remember when I was in year 12. Well, dating back to when I was in year 10, thinking about VCE subjects. Actually, I always consumed the media. Love sport, obviously, but there was never enough kids interested at my school to fill a media class. So I guess there were a couple of years there in year 11 and year 12 where I guess I was starved of something I knew I really wanted to get into. But how did I get in there? It was coming towards the back end of year 12, and I really needed to start thinking about what I was going to do next year. I knew I wanted to study media, but I also, I guess, wanted to put myself ahead of the pack, if you want to say it in those terms, and try and get some actual experience really at the ground level, and try and work my way up slowly. I think media is an interesting one in that I personally believe we definitely don't need to have your degree finished to get your foot in the door. So I'd encourage everyone watching now to not wait until you are done before you get proactive with trying to make some contacts, I guess. But into specifics, it was a cold call that I made to a sport producer who was working for Channel 7 at the time. He was actually a boundary producer on AFL games. And so, for instance, he was looking after, his one job on an AFL game was to look after Matthew Richardson or similar on the boundary throughout the night. And I remember I was at the footy one night and saw him and tracked down his number, didn't know him, called him, and within a couple of weeks he was taking me on a tour of Channel 7 in Docklands. I guess he liked the initiative shown for a 17-year-old kid to do so. School finished obviously later that year, year 12, and then it was January the next year in 2011 at the Australian Open where I was offered my first gig. While I would have happily worked for free at the Australian Open, lucky enough, it was a paid production assistant role, and we're talking the real sort of I guess, for want of a better term, sort of bottom feeder roles, like the real nitty gritty, non-glamorous sort of stuff. So logging press conferences of all the tennis players after their matches, and then feeding in what was said in those press conferences through to the producers to see whether it was worth running those grabs on air. So that's just an example of the type of stuff when you first enter the industry that you're expected to do, which it's all forms part of the big product at the end of the day.
Luca, what about yourself? Is it a similar story for you?
Yep. So at the end of my uni degree, which was about October 2016, out into the big world, obviously looking for different jobs. I applied for a range of jobs, radio, jobs at Clubland at AFL, and then the gig popped up at the footy show at Channel 9. I applied for that, had a wonderfully written cover letter by a friend, and then went in for an interview and managed to land the job as a production assistant on the 3 footy shows. So working on Footy Classified, the footy show was still going at that stage in 2017, and the Sunday footy show. And essentially same as Mitch, you start on those bottom feeder roles. Essentially, I was, you're getting coffees and you're doing the catering and you're writing notes for talent about the games that are coming up. But I loved it. I just loved it, and I was so happy to be there. And I managed to work my way up the rung, through the years, from production assistant to associate producer, and then eventually got a chance as a producer on the Sunday footy show. So that is how it happened for me.
And I think, as I said, sort of full disclosure, we're colleagues, we're also friends, and, we were almost galvanized at various points of sort of 2019 or 2018 even, when we were all in at Channel 9 studios, both of us working, or all of us working for 2 different companies, but, Saturday night, every week, we're all in there watching the footy to produce our various footy shows. I think that, there's 2 ways that you look at that experience. You either think, it would have been nice to be out on the piss on Saturday night, blah, 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 which absolutely crosses our mind. But then, the other way of looking at it is, how good is it to have a job where we're all paid to sit here and watch the footy and, and debate whether, whether it should have been a free kick or, whether that, whether that's going to lead the show or that should lead the show. So I think there's two ways of looking at that. And obviously you guys both took a pretty positive outlook to, rolling the sleeves up and having a go. I suppose just to close out, have you got any, Mitch, we'll start with you, any particular advice that you'd give to people who are interested in production and how they should get involved, other than just cold calling you? I can get your number out after class if you like.
It's pretty lucky, wasn't it? I think, I guess, once you do get there, I think it goes to the point that when you do work your way up, never think you're too important to take a equivalent 17-year-old under your arm and try and give them the same sort of opportunity you're afforded to. Because I look at the person who was able to help get my foot in the door, and I just think if that opportunity were to present to me now, a decade into my career and at a similar age to what he was at, I think paying that back is something I really want to do down the track. In terms of when you do get your foot in the door and when you are just starting out, I think obviously having pride in your work and putting the effort in, it's definitely not easy, and there are no shortcuts. There are a lot of people, particularly in sport, who have it as a passion, and clearly would love to work in the industry. So just think about it as you're one of many, and there aren't as many jobs out there as the people who probably want those jobs. So I guess you've got to stand out, and the way to do that is to bide your time. Once you do get your foot in the door, do the hard yards, as I said. Don't do the job. In this job, don't do it because you're in it for the bright lights, because it's just as unglamorous as it is glamorous. And yeah, at the end of the day, be passionate about it, and show initiative. Just try and stand out.
Just on that, you mentioned, doing it for the bright lights. And I know that everyone's driven differently, but in our course, there are a lot of people that are aspiring to be on-air talent. You mentioned off the top that you never wanted to be on-air talent. Was there a reason why you wanted to work behind the scenes as opposed to on-air?
I think it was, to be honest, it was probably more a personality thing. I've never been the loudest voice in the room or someone who liked to be the center of attention. But it didn't diminish any passion I had for working in sport. So I guess it was just the obvious route to take, was to be literally behind the camera as opposed to in front of it. It still excites you as much as it does being on camera. You probably, when you at the end of the day and you leave and go home, the same stress and anxiety about being on camera is probably not there. It's a different stress and a different pressure that gets put on you. But for me personally, yeah, it never interested me, to be on camera. And I just like to make the point, you think about we use a live sport broadcast as an example. You might see 3 or 4 talented, which is what we call commentators or experts that you see on camera. You might see 3 or 4 on a game. And they've likely, 3 out of the 4 have probably played the game and been a legend of the game. And that's why they are as distinguished as what they are, and people respect their expert opinions on a certain game. The other might be a commentator who has been doing it for 20 or 30 years. But you rarely see fresh young blood commentators get their chance on big time productions, like Channel 7's Footy, for example. But think about it, 3 or 4 people on camera, how many people behind the scenes are needed to make the production get to air? And you'd say outside of the technical people, there's probably between at least, I'd say 20 to 35 production people who work on every single game. And what's that? That's almost 10 times the amount of people you see on camera.
The debate about whether that is the right approach, having the legends and no new talent on there, is a debate for another time. But Luca, I think you broadly fall into Mitch's category of someone who wanted to work behind the scenes. I am the exception to the rule. I certainly fancy myself as on-air talent and have sort of now meandered back behind the scenes. And
have you shown some of
I was about to say, have you shown the videos yet, or just put your work?
No, just thank you. Order. I think that that aspect of the thrill that you mentioned, Mitch, is very real as a producer. Like you probably couldn't preempt that, or I certainly couldn't have preempted how much you ride the waves of emotions from the truck or the container or the studio in the background. Like it is a super tense environment, and it feels like when you have a good show, it feels like you win, and when you have a bad show or bad broadcast, it feels like a loss. You ride the waves of emotions, and as a producer, as you say, the buck stops with you. So everyone's looking to you for guidance, for leadership, and for inspiration and creativity. So I think it ends up being, for the control freaks amongst us, I think it ends up being a fulfilling task as well. So, there's some advice, whatever way you want to take that. But Luca, what about you? What advice would you give to the students who are, considering production and want to get some experience or runs on the board?
I think initiative is the word that comes to mind. I know Mitch mentioned it as well. I think there's initiative in every step of it. So while you're at uni, it's about showing initiative, working in networks, reaching out to people. As Mitch, said, he cold called someone from Channel 7. Show initiative with your classmates. Start a podcast. Go do a mock call of a game if you're interested in calling, or go shoot something that you're interested in shooting. Do a mock news story, anything like that. So there's initiative in that part of it, and then eventually when you do get your foot in the door, it's showing that initiative in your role. I think, one of the early things that someone told me in TV was it's hard to find good help. And if you can go in there and become good help and become an asset by, learning quick, showing that initiative, you become indisposable to these, whatever company you're with. So initiative all the way through. And it's about going in there with the right mindset and a growth mindset and wanting to learn every day. Mitch, I'm sure you do it every day. You go into JAMA, you've been doing TV for 11 years now, and you go in every day and go, how can I learn? How can I get better as a producer? How can I make better TV? And that's exactly what I do every day as well.
Gents, thank you so much for your time. Before we go, though, I did read in the confidential section, Luca, that there's perhaps trouble in paradise. I think I read that Tony Jones is upset about some of the treatment he's been getting on the Sunday Footy Show. What's going on? Have you lost the team? As the coach,
they all hate each other. That's the truth. They all hate each other. TJ put it very aptly that their bond between the panel has never been tighter, and I would absolutely agree with that. They are an incredible bunch.
Before we finish, actually, look, give us the and I talk about the exhilaration and the rush of live TV or panel shows. Tell us about the moments where you've found something that you think is very funny and you think it's going to make the What Caught My Eye segment, but you've got to go and sell that to the talent. Tell us about the lead up to that moment and how you sell some of your ideas to your talent.
Yeah, I think it is one of the harder aspects of the job. I don't know how many of you have seen the Sunday Footy Show, but What Caught My Eye is our funny segment that we do at the end of the first segment of the show. Often you'll find something during the week and you'll go, bang, this is gold. I can do something with this. And you brainstorm it. You're doing mock, you're going, how would I sell it on air? What can I use to support it, make it funnier? And you sort of get your little pitch together, your little bundle. These are the bits of vision I want. And you go to the talent, you bring them into the edit suite, you shut the door so no other talent walks in while you're showing them. And you have to sell it to them. You just go hard. But maybe make sure you've got a couple other producers there with you to give it a bit of a laugh. Maybe nudge the editor to give it a bit more of a laugh and pump it up a bit. And you're just praying that the talent find it funny, because the last thing they want to do is go out there and sell something that they don't think is funny because they know the boys aren't going to laugh. So
sometimes the funnier ones are the ones that don't work, and they all
yes,
pile on each other, right? So,
and that is the irony of it. But yeah, it is one of the harder parts of the job, just getting your cell together and trying to convince talent that this is going to work on air.
and lifting the curtain a little bit on that segment as an example is the order of them matter, don't they, Luca? Like,
Yes. Oh, yes. You don't want to be new ball.
funniest. Put
Yeah.
your second funniest at the start to try and get off to a flyer.
Yeah, yeah.
Try and give talent who have just been the butt of a joke the chance to
Respond.
get back immediately afterwards by having them do the next one. So there's a bit of thought that goes into it in terms of order, not just the individual items that go in.
And I think, you know, there's probably people in the room that are thinking, wow, like there is actually some puppeteering going on. And you know, I wouldn't have expected these guys to be pulling the strings behind the scenes, but there you go. That's how it's all happening. Gents, it's been a fantastic chat. Really appreciate your time today, and all the best for the rest of the footy season, the rest of the year.
Just before we go, Dave, for people at home, how can they see the wonderful work of DK and Gray from the NTFL?
Oh, I was about to mention the exact same thing.
I think this is the end point, and hopefully
Gray.
DK and Gray, NTFL special. Get on it.
Thanks very much, everyone.